Hi everyone, you're here sewing with Cody, and today we're on the Bernina 590, and we're going to be focusing on the wonders of Group and UnGroup and all of its neat things that you can do with it. The possibilities are endless. But always remember, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget you can always share these videos with your friends who also have a similar machine or have questions about the features of what is capable of working or doing. So let's get started. So here we have a design pulled up that's got 6 different color changes, so potentially 6 different colors. And it's a design that's built in. It's a little baby's foot that says baby. So, but what if we didn't want the word baby, or if we didn't want the foot outline? Typically what you would have to do is you would have to either bring it in on your, put it on your computer, bring it in software and take certain aspects out of it. Or while it's embroidering, you can skip certain pieces, certain parts of the design. Sometimes it's not always that easy. However, with the Bernina 590, which is what we're on here, and a number of other Bernina machines allows us to do this, and it's called Group and UnGroup. So what we can do is we can ungroup part of this design and then delete it. So let's see what we can do with that. So we have our design here that says baby. It's, like I said, a design that's built in. So I can come to my little eye, and I can go scroll down to my Group and UnGroup. So the Group and UnGroup is the icon with the 2 squares and the plus sign. So let's click on it. So we have our design that we want to ungroup. It's the only design we have up there. But if you had multiple designs, you would just click on the one that you do want to ungroup. So I can come to my ungroup. And so the very first thing Group and UnGroup does is when you select the ungroup option is it breaks up the design into all of its different colors. So remember we had 6 different colors. So now we have 6 different designs because each color is a new design in essence. So right now we can scroll through and we can see design number 1 is the A and part of the outline. The design number 2 is a Y. Design number 3 is the pink inner portion of all 4 letters. Design number 4 is the outline of the B. And the design 5 is the blue outline of the foot. And the purple is the lowercase b and a toe. So if you wanted just the outline of the foot, which is design number 5, we can delete everything else and just be left with the outline of the foot, that's what we want. So I like to start from the bottom and work my way up. So I know I want design 1 to go away. Want to delete it. So I've got design 1. I can hit just the trash can and it will verify. There's a toe, an outline, and the letter A. Delete, yes. Now the new design number 1 is the Y, and it'll show you what it's going to delete, yes. Then this one, yes. That one, yes. That one I want to keep, so I go up to this design, delete, yes. So here I'm left with a whole new design. This is really neat because now I didn't have to worry about skipping this stitch, making sure it stitches all of what I need of this color or whatnot. I am able to select it right off the bat of my new design that I created from a pre-existing design. So at this point, what we can do and what I usually recommend customers doing is they can either have the USB stick in and save it on the USB stick, or you can save it onto the machine. So we have our new design. So we go up to our little folder at the top, a little manila folder, and we select the second icon, which is the manila folder with a heart and an arrow going inside of it. So we'll select that. There's our foot, and all we have to do is really just click on it, and it will save it onto our machine. So there's our new design. So we can go and we can say, okay, I want to make it bigger. You can make it bigger. You can rotate it if you want. You can do whatever you want with that. So we could even rotate it. Let's actually do this. And we can go and put a name in there if we wanted to. So to add a name, let's hit the plus sign. And we go and select the font. Let's go and select Child's Play. And let's go and select a name. So here it's too big, which is fine. Just make it smaller. to make it fit. And the foot's kind of arched. So what we can do is we can also arch that letter, or that word. Just going to arch it in there. And just kind of maneuver it around until you get to be exactly how you want. So now, here's the other aspect of the group and ungroup. So right now we're dealing with two separate designs. So we can group this all together. So the group and ungroup, well, the group works two different ways. So what it will do is so let's go to our group and ungroup. So if we want to group something with the design we have selected, we'll have to come here. So it shows the group with the plus sign. So the way the group works is it will group the design that's directly above it. So if I hit group, it's going to add the word with that design. So if I click on Cody, there's no other design up here to add to it. So that button's no longer available. But let's just say if you had a design that you ungrouped and there was like 5 or 6 different colors when you were all said and done with it, and you wanted to add or combine all those designs back together, you could start from one and keep adding all the ones, because you have to click it 4 or 5 times. But what you could do is you can come all the way down in our tile scene, come all the way down to a design that doesn't have a number. That is our select all. So as you can see here, the word Cody and the foot outline are all visible, opposed to just having just the foot or just the name visible. So by coming all the way down here, it will group everything together. So if you had more than just the 2 designs, that's what you would want to do if you want to group everything together. So there's our design. So all we have to do now is go to the embroidery screen and start stitching. Well, of course, you would rearrange where you want the design to be, but other than that, you're good to go. So that is the group and ungroup on the Bernina 590. But like I said, this also applies to the Bernina 700, the Bernina 500, the Bernina 590, the Bernina 790, and the Bernina 880. All of those machines have this group and ungroup function. That's a wonderful, wonderful feature. So the next icon here is our mirror image. So this will mirror image it vertically, and the one next to it will mirror image it horizontally. With fonts, this is something you typically do not want to do. This icon right here, this is our copy. This is wonderful because this allows us to create a design, and we may have altered it quite a bit, and we can make an exact replica of it, and then we can have 2 of them. So this is great if you need to repeat the design multiple times and you've made some changes, or if you have like a name and you want to put an identical little object on each side of it, you can change that little object and then make an exact replica of it. And that's our copy. And then of course our trash can. So this is excellent. So say if we didn't have the undo and redo, let's say if I wanted to just delete that one name, I could just have that design selected, and we can hit the trash can, it will verify, and then have it deleted. And the word art, this is something that we saw with the Bernina 570. So this works with the fonts that are built into the machine. And so if we hit this, we'll come to this screen here. The bottom knob, when we turn it, will arch the letters. So clockwise arches them this way, counterclockwise arches them that way. And the top knob will space out the letters. So it'll allow them to take up more space, especially with a small name or a small word. The next thing here, this one's really neat. So this is our pattern resequence. So if we had multiple designs on the screen, and if you wanted to change the stitch order, so basically with any embroidery machine for the most part, it's going to stitch out the designs in the order in which you place them. But if let's go just pick a random design. Well, not anything there. Let's see. So if we go and pick a random design like this, so we've got 2 designs. So we've got Cody, which is design 1, and you got the elephant, which is design 2. So it's going to stitch out the name first and then the elephant. But what that's going to do is it's going to stitch the elephant over the name in this case. if that's what you want, then you can leave it like that. But just say if you had a design where you wanted the name to stitch out on top of the elephant, but the order in which you put them won't call for that. So what we can easily do here with the resequence, the pattern resequence, we can come here, we can select the design, so Cody, which is going to stitch out first, we can tell it, I want it to stitch out second. So we just select it and move the arrow up or down depending on where it's at. And now it doesn't move where those designs are, but does change the order in which they're going to stitch. So now it's going to stitch out the elephant and then the name. So that's what that is. That's a wonderful feature, especially if you're bringing a number of designs into the screen area to be stitched, and you can kind of change them as you go, because what you're planning on doing may change. So the next column is our first icon is the rotation. So here I can click here, and I can rotate my design 1 degree at a time if I wanted to. And you can see the name change 1 degree at a time. Or I can do 90-degree increments, which is sometimes usually what you want to do. But you can change it 1 degree at a time. Here is our pinpoint placement. This is another unique feature to the Bernina 590, 500, 700, and 790. The 880 also has it too, but the pinpoint placement's a wonderful, wonderful feature. We'll get to that in a different video because it's kind of involved. And we saw the horizontal mirror image. The next one is our endless embroidery. This is wonderful. So let's delete that. So this is something that we'll play with when we work with some of the built-in stitches. But what it is, you can have a design and you can tell it how many times you want it to repeat. So this is excellent if you're doing borders on a quilt, borders on like a table runner or something, some long piece, and you're doing the same design over and over and over again. You can tell it how many designs you want to be able to fit inside the hoop, but what it's going to do is it's going to give you reference, it's going to stitch out reference marks. So when you stitch these out, you can then unhoop it and then rehoop the next section of your fabric. Just make sure those arrows are within the hooping. And then what that's going to do is the very first thing it's going to ask, because it knows you're in the endless embroidery, it's going to ask you to line up and tell the machine where those 2 arrows are. And then it knows where to put your next set of designs. That's a wonderful feature. That would be in a separate video we'll have to show. The next thing is the check. So this is your traditional check. So what it'll do when we come here, it's going to prompt us for a hoop. But the check, what it's going to do is it's going to show you the top left, the top right, bottom left, and bottom right of your design. But the Berninas, as we've shown in other videos, the Berninas have something even better. They have absolute check, which we'll show. So here it shows you the top left, kind of boxes out the design, the top right, the bottom right, and the bottom left. So it gives you an idea of where the design is going to stitch out. And we'll see the hoop move. Bottom right, top right, and top left. But while we're talking about that, so that's the check, but Berninas have, remember, absolute check. So what that is you can click anywhere on the design and the hoop and everything will move to show you exactly where that portion of the design is going to stitch out, which is excellent, especially if you're trying to stitch around something that's already been embroidered or kind of fussy stitch around a certain design or a fabric. The absolute check is wonderful. There are many other advantages, but those are just a few. The last 2 things on our screen here is our group and ungroup and our density change. So our group and ungroup is another feature found on the 590 that isn't found on its previous models, is the group and ungroup. So right now we have a design. So I have my name, the CODY, but if it had multiple colors or different designs within a design, but it was still considered one design, we can take out certain aspects of it. So we'll do something simple here. So let's click group and ungroup, and we're going to hit ungroup. And the very first thing it does is it separates out each letter. Now each letter is a separate design. So if I wanted, I can come here and take that Y and I can move that Y down. So now we see that we're able to manipulate each individual design or each individual letter. Even though we typed it in all as one word, we're now able to manipulate and change each individual letter because we ungrouped it and made each letter an individual design, which is really, really cool, especially when you want to do 3-letter monograms and you want to make the center letter larger. You can type in just 3 letters and they'll all line up beautifully, and then you can ungroup it and select that center letter, or basically the last name, initial, and you can make it bigger and you can manipulate that one independently of the others. Wonderful, wonderful feature. And then we can come all the way down, so where it's all selected, go back to our group and ungroup and hit group, and now it's going to group it all back together. So the next thing is where we can change the density. So here we can tell the machine we want our design more dense or less dense depending on what fabric we're working with. And we can also change a satin stitch to a step stitch. So these things aren't something you want to go and change initially. These are things that you almost have to stitch out the design first and really see if you need to change it and how you need to change it. Because some designs, depending on where it came from or whatnot, they may stitch out perfectly fine. There may be no need to change. But some designs may stitch out really loosely, and you may want to increase that density, or you may want to decrease the density if you're working on a lighter weight fabric. So to increase the density, it's by percentage here. So you can increase it or you can decrease it. And now as for our stitch density, or for our type of stitch, this is really only for fonts, and typically the fonts that are built in. So here we've turned on the step stitch. So we can take a satin stitch, which is what all our fonts are that are built into the machine, and turn them into a step stitch. So from a satin to a step. We can't go from a step to a satin. So but what we do here, so by default, what it does is it changes satin stitches that are wider than 8 millimeters apart, basically stitch length, and it brings it to 8 millimeters. So if you had a satin stitch that was less than 8 millimeters, it's not going to do anything by default. So what you have to do is you kind of have to play with it. You kind of have to know. And so you need to decrease that stitch length. So I've found anywhere between like 3.5 to 5.5 is a good step stitch. But it really depends on your fabric and your stitch to say. So that's pretty much it with all the different icons in the iScreen. Like I said, there will be separate videos going over a few of the other ones in more detail, because otherwise this would be an hour-long video. So let's say we've got our name and we've got it where we want it. So we can exit out of here. And so we've got our hoop on. Now typically I would tell you, do not put your hoop on yet, because I would want you to do something different. However, because we went and did the check and it prompted us to take off our hoop and then to put it back on, because it prompted that, we're safe. But typically, what I would have you do is, so you could I would not have you put your hoop on, but I would have you move your design where you want, change the size, do all that, and this isn't moving, especially for our first design, really. And once you have what you want, or close to what you want, then I would prompt you to click the needle button right here, and this will bring us to our embroidery side of the machine, like the embroidery screen. And in the process of doing that, it would then tell you to remove the hoop if you already had it on, and that's why I say do this before you even put it on. And then the module will calibrate with the machine, and then it will then sometimes prompt you to put it on, or you could then put it on and then continue. It just saves you a step if you come here first. And there are a number of things. So if we want to do absolute check or do the check, which requires you to move the module with the hoop on it, it's going to tell you to remove the hoop, click the check mark like you saw earlier, because I did do it, and then put the hoop back on. But there is one more thing I didn't, or it's actually two things I didn't go over, and that's our little painter's palette here. And this is going to show you the number of color changes. that your design has. And the reason it has 4 is because we did break the design up, but it will just stitch out as one because it's all one color. If not, I'll show you what to do. But if we had a design that had multiple colors, it would stitch it, it will show you all of the different colors. And here's where you can go and change the brand of thread as well. So let's actually go pick something different, just so we can see this. So this is a question I get all the time, the exact question I get is, how do I delete my design off of my screen so I can go and select a new one? Well, my answer is there's absolutely no reason to delete the design to add a new one. You just go and select a new design and it will replace the old design. So if we wanted an additional design here, you'd hit the plus sign. If you want something totally different, we go to our folder and we go and just select a new design. So let's say if we wanted the airplane. So we selected the airplane and the name is gone because we told it to replace our existing design. So that's how you go and select a new design, is just go and select it and the old design will just go away. So here we can see off to the side there's a number 8 next to the little palette, the little painter's palette, and that means there's 8 different color changes. Now there could only be 6 different colors, but because the order they need to stitch out, there are 8 different color changes. And we can see them all here and where they're going to stitch. It's pretty detailed and shows you where. Now let's just say if we wanted to change the brand of thread that the design is digitized to. So if you were to have purchased a design and it was using Floriani thread and you want to change it to Isacord thread, because you have all your collection in, it's super easy. So we'll just come to any of these colors really and just hit the little arrows going around. So just hit that. And then up at the top right here, you can change whatever brand you want to work with. So like here it's Marathon Poly. I have no idea what that is. So once you selected that brand, you can just come here where it shows the 3 different spools of thread. And then now what it does, if we go back, now it changed all of the colors that were originally in that design. It changed it to a different brand and its closest matching color. So this is great. So if the design was digitized in Marathon thread and you have Isacord, you can go and change it in the machine and it's going to give you the Isacord corresponding numbers to match it the best that it can, which is a wonderful feature. So now that we've got our design, we've got our colors, and we can come to our little needle down here, click it, the machine and everything's going to calibrate it. This time it prompts us to put on our hoop. So we'll put on our hoop, hit the check mark. And now it wants to start stitching out the airplane in this case. So what we can do here, we've got a multitude of other options available. So what we can do is we can put a basting stitch around the design. So what this does, especially if you're using like a topping stabilizer or other stabilizers to go along with it, or if we're dealing with a stretchy fabric or fabrics that aren't actually hooped in the hoop like we have here, and we just kind of want to stabilize it all together, especially like I mentioned, a topping, we can have it stitch a basting stitch just around the design. But if we wanted to stitch a basting stitch around the entire hoop, we just click it again. And now it will stitch a basting stitch around whatever hoop we have in the machine. So this is, the basting stitches are also really nice when it helps prevent the fabric from pulling or stretching because it basically stitches all of that together with all of your layers of stabilizer. So it's a nice feature, but something you don't need to use all the time or want to use all the time. Some people do use it all the time, but it's really up to you. Here we can move our design around some more. So like right now, it's no longer where we kind of want it. So you could move it up within this screen. And then it's showing you right now the starting position of that specific color. So here's a common one. This is our broken thread. So our broken thread is designed just like that. So if you broke a thread or you ran out of thread or something happened and you need to go back a couple of stitches, that's where you go. So one thing to remember is, so just if you ran out of bobbin thread or a thread broke or something, or you ran out of top thread, that happens too, and the machine detected it before you did, I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not hovering over my machine where it's embroidering. I'm off doing something else. So the machine typically stops and tells me when something happened. So if the machine stopped, it's going to automatically stop on the broken thread screen. And so it's telling you generally where you're at, and it's showing, and the next screen over here is showing you exactly where you're at. So then we can use our knobs to kind of go forward or backward, whatever the case may be, because sometimes you actually want to skip a part of the design, so you could go forward. But to go back, you can use either knob, turning it counterclockwise. However, the top knob goes back 1 stitch at a time. The bottom knob goes back or forward like 50 or 60 stitches at a time. So that's really if you want to bypass something, or if something happened, you really have to go much further back. So typically, to go back, you're using the top knob because you can do 1 stitch at a time. But if you detected there was an issue and you stopped the machine before it detected it, it's going to come back and stop at this screen. So you would have to come to the broken thread screen to be able to go back a couple of stitches once you fix and rectify the problem. So the other icons we see here is our thread cutter. And that's something you typically want to keep on unless you're working with metallic thread. Then you would want to turn that off. The one below that with the little different colored dots, this is our monochromatic. So if we had a design like this airplane and we wanted to stitch it all in one color for whatever reason, or at a certain point we just want to stitch the last 2 color changes in the same color, you can just click this, and what it's going to do, it's not going to stop for a color change. It'll just keep on going. It would stop for jump stitches and things like that, but it won't stop, and actually it would just pause for jump stitches and cut them, but it won't stop and tell you to change the next color. It will just keep on going. And so we've got a few other options. So the other one is the little hare, the little rabbit. So this will maximize the speed of your stitching. This is something I really don't recommend. And in the book, it does tell you when you do select that, your stitch quality will decrease. Potentially, at least. It really depends on your design that you're working with. And unless you're on a sturdy table, I wouldn't recommend that anyway, because the tables can bounce if it does go at super speed. So you've got one kind of icon kind of grayed out, and what it is, it's a red spool of thread, a green spool of thread, and then another red spool of thread, and an arrow connecting the first and third spool, both of the red colored threads. So what this is, if we have a design or multiple designs where there's nothing overlapping certain colors, and so if we had 2 airplanes that are identical, typically it would have you stitch out the first airplane from start to finish and then the second airplane from start to finish. What this will do is it will stitch out the green in this airplane, and then it'll go and stitch out the green in the other airplane. So it minimizes your color changes. So it's wonderful. Then it'll stitch out the red in this airplane, and then go stitch out the red in the second airplane. So it doesn't matter the order in which you put them in, it will kind of complete them both at the same time to reduce your thread changes. And this again is our endless embroidery, but that would be in an endless embroidery video. So there's our airplane. So actually one off of that. So at this point you would just start stitching, and it will just do its thing. So it's going to stitch out the first color, which is this green, and it'll stitch out the green, and then it'll stop, and then it'll prompt you to stitch out the next color. And then you change the thread color to that, you would start it up, it'll finish, and then it'll prompt you to change to the next color after that. So that's the that's the detailed overview of the Bernina 590 embroidery. Stay tuned for more videos going into more detail about specific aspects of the machine, of the embroidery side, specifically pinpoint placement, playing more with group and ungroup, those things, and like endless embroidery, because they need their own video. But the detailed overview like we just did will be perfect for just getting started or refreshing on certain aspects, because we can go back to edit screen, we can go back and change different things, because there are a number of wonderful, amazing features that we have on the embroidery side of this Bernina 590. All right, if you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and happy embroidering.